Hey, well, good morning. This is Ian R. Crane, and it's absolutely glorious first day of spring here at the Misson Springs Protection Camp in North Nottinghamshire. So this is the start of the 6th frack-free spring since the moratorium on fracking was lifted back in December of 2012. And today is actually the 3rd anniversary of the premiere of my documentary, Voices from the Gas Fields. And in fact, that documentary is arguably more relevant in the UK today than perhaps it was when it was released, because a much greater chunk of the UK, particularly in the north of England, is still under threat from this insidious industry. But, we seem to be making some good progress. And, that documentary, I actually put it on YouTube and made it freely available from the 1st of May 2015. And in the first month, YouTube recorded in excess of 26,000 views of that documentary. In the ensuing almost 3 years, apparently it's only had another 26,000 views. So 26,000 in the first month, and then 26,000 in the following 32 months or so. But like I said, it's as relevant today, arguably more so than it was when it was released. So please feel free to share Voices from the Gas Fields, and not amongst the anti-fracking community, but let's get it out to a wider audience, particularly, as I say, in the targeted areas. So, fake news. Well, in the House of Lords recently there was a debate, and it was in response to some written questions. And David McLean, who now masquerades as Lord Blencathra in the House of Lords, I think he must have had his tongue very firmly in his cheek when he asked, what is the government doing to determine whether there's any evidence that Russia has issued fake news to discredit the UK fracking industry? Well, this is an old chestnut. I mean, we heard, what is it now, 3 years ago at least. I think we were on Barton Moss when the allegation was made that the anti-fracking community and the protectors of Barton Moss were on the payroll of the Russian government. And, nothing, of course, could be more evidence of fake news than such a statement. But it's pumped out by the PR agencies of both the industry and the government, so plausible deniability from government departments, claiming that protectors are on the Russian payroll purely to try to discredit them in the eyes of the wider public. Well, the fracking industry and the British government, they don't need any Russian interference, because they are more than capable of shooting themselves in the foot time and time and time again. And if anybody is pumping out fake news, then really look no further than North Yorkshire MP Kevin Hollinsnake. Now, I'm not suggesting for one moment that he's getting any feed from Russia, but if he was, then, maybe the email reads something like, Kevin, comrade Kevin, we need you to spread the rumour that 100% of British gas comes from Russia. Because that's what he's trying to allude to. And yet the evidence is clear that that isn't the case. So the prime perpetrator of fake news, certainly over the last couple of years or so, regarding the fracking industry, has been MP Kevin Hollinsnake. And maybe his attachment to pumping out fake news was becoming a bit of an embarrassment to the British government, because he was literally bitch-slapped by Greg Clark and his department, the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, when they tweeted out a few days ago, and I quote, "Claims that we rely on gas from Russia are false. Almost half of our gas comes from Great Britain." Oh, that's right here. "With Norway and Qatar being our major international suppliers. And then it goes on to absolutely corroborate that by stating less than 1% of our gas comes from Russia, and we are in no way reliant on it. And a few weeks ago, when the media was pumping out that there was a gas shortage because we'd had 3 days of sub-zero temperatures, which was, of course, fake news. And the government was forced to, and as was Centrica and British Gas, they were forced to retract those statements when, you know, attention was drawn to the British government's own analysis and their own reports, and none other than the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy again, which commissioned and then published a report a year ago which stated that regardless of geopolitical stress, then because of the network of international gas supplies that had been established, then Britain might have to pay a little bit more for the gas, but there was no risk to the supply. And in fact, it went on to state that the supply capability was in the region of 200 to 235% of demand. So, you know, Kevin Hollinsnake, keep lying, because actually, you know what, you have done more to undermine the integrity of parliamentarians than probably anyone before you. And, you know, so just keep on doing it, because, you know, somebody actually spoke to me at the weekend, and they said, you know, a few years ago, they would have dismissed the suggestion that fracking could contaminate in the way in which, you know, we know it does, and they would have dismissed it just as, you know, the rantings of an anti-establishment left-wing community. But this individual, who, by the way, stated that he has always voted Tory and would probably always vote Tory, although was seriously considering just not voting at all in the next election, but he said that it was his own research into the unconventional gas industry in the US, in Canada, in Australia, that had made him realise that the government, and in particular, sadly, most of all, his own MP, would blatantly lie to push through a corporate agenda. So thank you, Kevin, because that's just one individual, but we know there are hundreds, if not thousands of others who are actually questioning their worldview as a result of the consistent and persistent lies, or fake news if you prefer, that you pump out and have been pumping out basically ever since that you got into office. And of course, those 400 people who attended the debate that you had a few weeks ago with Mike Hill, and although there were, I think it was about a dozen or so who voted in favour, and of course that included Alan Lynn of Third Energy, it included the people from the Environment Agency and the Health and Safety Executive that were in the audience, but everybody else gave you a resounding message, which was frack off. But such is your capacity for self-deception that you went on to the BBC Politics programme just a few days later and claimed that 80% of your constituencies supported the unconventional gas industry in North Yorkshire. So, you know, it's brilliant. You know, you couldn't make this up. In fact, you know, it's so absurd that, of course, some people just won't believe it. But, you know, it will rest with them. And when they do their own research, of course, they will come round. Well, thankfully, Kevin, in your own constituency, the local community have done your job for you. And also they've done the job of Inspector John Hodgen, who is the head of fraud and economic crime with North Yorkshire Police. Because between the two of you, you should have been flagging up that Third Energy was totally incapable, incompetent, and did not have the financial wherewithal to frack at Kirby Misperton. But no, you did everything you possibly could to basically cover that up, because it's not possible to claim that you weren't aware of it, because it was being flagged up to you on an ongoing basis, particularly over the last 12 months or so. But no, you kept your head buried in the sand, or so far up the butt of God, I've even forgotten his name now, John Dewar, the erstwhile head of Third Energy, that you just kept pushing out the lies and the fake news. But anyway, Third Energy have been found wanting. Barclays Bank made it clear that they just about had enough of Third Energy and John Dewar, and we're not going to put any more money in there. So now they've skulked away from Kirby Misperton with their tail very firmly between their legs. And so the clear up at Kirby Misperton Protection Camp continues. And this weekend it's going to be a massive push to get the field back into the condition that we found it when we took it on the afternoon of December 20th, 2016. And our thanks to the landowner for his tolerance, for his understanding, and for basically leaving us in peace to do what we came to do. And I'm pleased to say that the protection camp has, of course, worked with the local community there to achieve a result that very few believed would be possible at the start of the campaign. It's not over. You know, the well has not been capped yet, but nonetheless, it's a massive step forward. So if you are anywhere in the area of Kirby Misperton this coming weekend, you know, please come down to the protection camp because we literally have to go over that field with the proverbial tooth comb to pick up any debris that has escaped the clear up operation so far. So that's this weekend at Kirby Misperton Protection Camp. And of course, meanwhile, here at Misson Springs, this is very much the new front line against the unconventional gas industry on the eastern side of the Pennines. Unfortunately, of course, British Gas, trading as Quadrilla, are pushing ahead with their well over at Prestonhoo Road. So right now, you know, there's no doubt that Prestonhoo Road is the only location in the UK that is at risk of being fracked in 2018. And you know, certainly I think more effort could be made to making people aware that this is British Gas trading as Quadrilla, just as we made a massive effort to make people aware that at Kirby Misperton it was Barclays Bank trading as Third Energy. And of course, these companies, they deliberately try and create entities that no one's ever heard of so they can hide behind that other unknown corporate logo. So here at Misson Springs, iGas are rolling kit into the well site, and as I've said before, it could be argued that iGas have chosen very well this location here at Misson Springs because it is the butt end of Nottinghamshire. It's a long way from Nottingham. It's only 7 miles from Doncaster and barely a bit more than 10 miles from Scunthorpe, but those are in different counties. So the people in Nottingham, this is far too far away to come up to Misson Springs. For people in Doncaster, oh no, that's Nottinghamshire. For people in Scunthorpe, Lincolnshire, oh no, that's Nottinghamshire. Well, you know, the reality is that contamination doesn't respect county borders. And as I was explaining in Bolsover a couple of nights ago, you know, Bolsover is just 20 miles away from Tinker Lane, 30 miles away from Misson Springs, and Bolsover sits right in the heart of the INEOS licence in the southeastern quadrant of the Bowland Shale. And of course, INEOS will be certainly having an arrangement with iGas to get access to the data from the core samples that they intend to extract here. So, you know, this is an issue for Lincolnshire, for South Yorkshire, for North Derbyshire, and of course for Nottinghamshire. So, you know, don't just assume that because it's in another county, you're not going to be affected. So it's time to start taking an interest in what's occurring in this butt end of Nottinghamshire, this beautiful butt end of Nottinghamshire, unspoiled, primarily because no one comes here. And that's what iGas are banking on. So that's what we need to change. So, what else we got? Well, over the last couple of days, of course, I have made an effort to try to stimulate people's curiosity on the reason behind the Arboricide in Sheffield. That's the technical term, I'm told, for tree felling, unnecessary tree felling, Arboricide. And once again, you know, don't take my word for it. Do your own research. You know, the British government and the telecoms companies are not exactly going to hold their hand up and say, you know what, we need to cut down probably in the region of about 1 million trees in the UK, so that our new 5G telephone networks actually function without customer complaints. So what they do is, they create the reason for massive tree felling as disease or health and safety because of boughs overhanging roads or whatever, and people fall for it. Yet the reality is that 5G, and the evidence of course is there if you look for it, and I've already linked to some of it under previous videos from the last few days. The evidence is there, and the reason that trees are going to be culled in towns and cities throughout the UK is so that 5G works. And already in the US, in LA, they're putting 5G phone masts on pretty much anything they can. Whether that's lampposts or road signs, traffic signals. But in the UK, the telecom companies themselves have acknowledged that they have to put in place some 500,000 5G transmitters in towns and cities around the country if it's going to work effectively. And it has to be line of sight. And anything that basically gets in the way between the transmitter or receiver and the receptor, either computer or phone or car or whatever it is, then it can deplete the signal. And that very much applies to foliage on trees, and believe it or not, raindrops on the leaves on trees. So this is the primary reason why we are going to see trees being culled at an increasing rate of knots around the UK over the next few years. And please do your research, because there's a lot of information out about 5G, and make your own mind up. Make your own mind up as to whether or not you want to be able to download Facebook a couple of nanoseconds faster, or watch a movie in 4D as opposed to just high def. That's what you're going to get. A little bit of quicker access on the internet in return for the lungs of the nation actually being stripped bare. So once again, the choice is yours. Someone said to me on Monday after I first mentioned this, they said, "Oh, Ian, great that you mentioned 5G and the relationship between that and cutting down the trees, but you'll never stop it." Well, I heard the same thing about fracking 5 years ago, and here we are 5 years later, and of course I haven't stopped it. Let's understand that. I haven't stopped it. What has stopped fracking is communities coming together right across the country, doing their own research, and basically just saying, no, we're not going to have this in our community, and we are going to fight it all the way. And now it's time to do exactly the same thing for 5G. And take a look for yourself, look at the evidence that's out there, ask the questions of your parliamentarians, and let's make it a public debate. And of course, if ultimately people just go, oh, you know what, I would actually rather be able to download Facebook quicker and download a movie quicker, so yes, I'm prepared to see the decimation of millions of trees around the UK so that I can have quicker internet access. Well, God help you, because of course you are then well and truly in the grip of the corporatocracy, and they will just continue their assault on the natural world in return, or in their quest to just achieve greater and greater profits. So ultimately, as is always the case, the choice is absolutely ours, and you can